the channel, ladies and gentlemen. This is my Season 1 review of The Witcher. I will be discussing non-spoilers first, so for those that don't want any spoilers, don't worry. I will give you a massive fair warning for spoilers, and there'll be just a small section at the end. I may even timestamp it down below in the description box, but I'm not promising anything. Now, The Witcher is obviously featuring Henry Cavill in the starring role, Freya Allan as Cirie, Anya Chalotra as Yennefer, and this is created by Lauren Schmidt, based heavily off of the books, not the games. Very important distinction to make, because there are some subtle differences, and Henry Cavill does his best to channel the game Geralt into this series, and I think he does a very good job overall. Now, Henry Cavill is the star of this show. He is the star of this show in many, many ways. He is the reason why I kept watching. Although he's not in it that much. So for those thinking that yes, it's titled The Witcher, and yes, the trailers primarily featured Henry Cavill, and you'd be thinking that he would be in it as the mainstay, unfortunately he's not. He's almost relegated to a background character in a lot of the episodes. I think there's 2 episodes where he is front and center, and they are the best episodes. No surprise there, because he's probably the best actor out of the bunch. And I will say this, that this kind of takes me on to my next point about this series, is that unfortunately, I think you're going to have turned a fair few people off, because it's fine to have The Witcher as a background character. That's absolutely fine. If that is the case with the books, not a problem at all. But the issue is in the marketing and the naming of the show. Like, I get it, if the books are titled The Witcher, that's fine. But the marketing shouldn't have had him so front and center, because it is a form of false advertisement, and it's really not representative of the show that you get. You would be very, very mistaken by watching those trailers and thinking that there is absolutely every single episode there's going to be epic hulking monsters and swords clashing with beasts. It's simply not the case. And because of that, and because of the marketing as such, I do think that this fails on that level. Now, like I say, I really liked Henry Cavill in this. His voice of Geralt of Rivia was a little bit old every now and then. It's very hammed up in parts, but for 90% of it, it was fine. He was a very good portrayal in this. I really, really did like him. And that brings me on to my next point. He's actually a really likable character because, and again, I'm not overly familiar if this is in respect to the books or not, but Jaskier, the bard, plays off of Henry Cavill in a really, really fun way. And I liken it to the likes of Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd has a very stone-cold demeanour, and characters bounce off of him in a way which make him likeable, make him humanised. And for those that aren't familiar with British comic books, i.e. Judge Dredd, another more prominent character recently that's rose to stardom, I guess, and pop culture fame would be the Mandalorian. Mandalorian inherently is a very nonplussed character, but it's the Baby Yoda that bounces off of that character which makes him likeable. So again, same thing with The Witcher. The Witcher is relatively likeable though, but he comes out of his shell more and more with his interactions with Jaskier, the bard. Now, the other actors in this show are what I would say really let this show down, and it's not the mainstay actors. So Anya Chalotra is very, very good as Yennefer, and she goes through a fantastic arc, which I'll get to in a minute. But the other actors, which I guess are sort of secondary, sort of background characters, like the Queen, the Lioness Queen, and just these other little characters that get woven in, they really do let the show down. They genuinely do let the show down. And this is a show which actually has like a lot of promise. There's a lot to like in here, but there's silly little things which do bring the show down on a whole. And acting is one of them, but again, it's propped up heavily on Henry Cavill's rather large shoulders. And he's not an actor which is absolutely staggering. Henry Cavill is a fine actor, but he's not a staggeringly good one. So it's very difficult to say that this is a incredibly well performed series on a whole. And like I said, Henry Cavill is very, very good in the role of Geralt. But yeah, the other actors that bounce off of him, not so much. And Anya Chalotra in this is very, very good. I was really, really engaged in her arc. She starts out as a helping hand on her family's pig farm, to discovering that she has magic within her, chaos, as they put it in this show, to becoming a very, very powerful mage or sorceress, whatever you want to call it. I was very, very engaged in her arc, her journey through searching for power and acceptance and beauty and all of these things was very, very good. It was very engaging, and that's how you do strong female characters. Now, I don't particularly care that she's been race swapped particularly. I'm aware that that's a thing, but that's how you do strong female characters. You have to be engaged in them, you have to have some empathy for them, you have to like them, and you have to have them go through something which makes you, engaged in the character so much so that you can believe them when they come out on the other side as a strong female character. Most strong female archetypes have to do that. Linda Hamilton in Terminator, for instance, Ellen Ripley, the great Sigourney Weaver in Alien, all very, very good cult classic strong female characters, and they all go through a character arc. They are not perfect as they start out, and they end up as that strong female archetype. So I really liked Yennefer. I was very, very invested. Now, the other main character, and it is a main character, because again, Henry Cavill is sort of relegated to a background character for the most part of this show, Cirie. Now, Cirie is a young girl played by Freya Allan, and her acting is fine. I wouldn't say it was terrible. I wouldn't say it was good. I would say it was fine. But it's her character arc and what she's doing and what she's about and things like this, which does let it down. And it very much dominates this series on a whole. And I get it, because it's the journey for Henry Cavill's Geralt of Rivia to get a hold of Freya Allan's Cirie, and then for them to then obviously progress moving forwards. I get it, but it really did let it down. And it dominated the series so much so in a negative way, I think. And that is what brings me on to my next point now, is the timelines of this series. It's not blindingly obvious from the get-go that this series is running off of multiple timelines which will eventually conjoin. It is messy in its editing. It is very janky, and I commend the producers, the writers, on doing it in this way, or at least trying to do it in this way, should I say, because it's ambitious, but it doesn't land. They don't stick the landing. And I'm hopeful that next season we don't have these timelines anymore. It would appear that way anyway. And yeah, that's what really let this season down, because it led to some very, very bad editing choices. Very, very bad editing choices. And again, that's kind of what brings me on to my next point, is the editing and the overall technical aspect of this series is not the best. And it's a shame, because Netflix does have some very well edited shows. Really, really well edited shows. But the sound mixing on this show, I genuinely had a very big problem with it. The dramatic, cinematic soundtrack that would come on would be vastly louder than any of the talking and the dialogue that was happening in the series, which was a huge issue. You would have very strangely mixed background noises combined with, say, horses riding and things like this, and screeches of monsters. It was all just out of whack. And they need to do something about that for the next series, because I was forever turning up and down my speakers, and it was a real problem. And I know other people had problems with it too. So it's not just me and my old man ears. It's definitely a issue. And again, more technical aspects is the cinematography behind this series. There is some absolutely fantastic swordplay in this. I think Henry Cavill has clearly been trained up, massively so, on swordsmanship, and it looks great. But the cinematography lets it down, because I'm unable to actually look at it all properly. And you can see that Henry Cavill is doing a very, very good job. Very, very good job with what he's doing here. But it's edited in a way, and again, shaky camera, you've got some Dutch angles here and there, you've got some very odd framing of certain shots, which does let it down and it makes it look cheap. And I'm aware that this budget for this show might not be super big, but with a better cinematographer, it wouldn't look so cheap. And that's one of those things which unfortunately didn't improve. Episode 1 was not so good, and it picked up a little bit, but it seemed to stay at a very amateurish level throughout. And I know that's not going to be a problem for a lot of people. I'm aware of that. But for me, I picked up on it, and it's just one of those things that was very difficult to sort of not notice once I had noticed it. And again, this is what brings me on to my next point, which is overall the budget and the effects. Now, this show it's not going to be a cheap show. Okay, they're on some very good locations. The locations are fantastic. Some of the sets which they inevitably built were, good, fine. But then the effects, the special effects, the CG, does let it down in parts. For the most part, it's fine, like it's actually quite good. But then there's certain episodes, which I will get to in spoilers briefly, those episodes really do let it down. Now, I'm aware that the showrunners behind this are looking for a new effects company. I know that. I heard about that months ago from someone that I know that works at an effects company. So I know that they're trying to get better effects. So for those people that will just dismiss my points of the effects, the showrunners have acknowledged it by changing the effects company. So again, you don't need to defend them. They are aware that the effects are not that good because they are actively sourcing a new effects company. And it does let it down. And I think ultimately this show would have had a rather large budget, but it's not been spent wisely, or the effects company just, I guess, were, hoarding the cash flow and not giving a very good product. Who knows? The practical effects work is actually very decent. And it's much better than the CG work. And it's a shame because there's certain shots here which could have been done with practical effects and people in outfits and costumes and things like that. And I'm aware that they cost money. I'm aware. But it would appear that in certain shots, models were actually made and outfits were actually made, but for other shots they use CG. Now, I know that, practical effects can't stand in for CG in all things, but when you're shooting things at dark, at night, you've got fog, a lot of that can cover up the limitations of practical effects. So it's a shame that they didn't use that, or at least, try, I guess. Now, overall, I would give this like a 5.5 out of 10, verging on a 6. It's fine, verging on good. I think this show has a lot of promise. Like, I really wanted to like this show. There's just some silly things which let it down. And I do feel that I think a lot of people will be put off by the fact that Henry Cavill is not front and center. And I know that a lot of people that have read the books will have said that, no, that's fine, because they're sticking to the books to a T. That's absolutely fine, no worries. But ultimately, if your advertising is such that it frames The Witcher as the front and center man, then you do need to deliver on that, because, essentially, you're being a cock tease. No one likes a cock tease. That's not fun, Teasing's only good when there's a payoff, like a happy ending, for instance. So this was a bit of an issue for me, and I think it will be a bit of an issue for other people. Now, other bits and pieces of, main problems and things like that, I can't really say I overly had any. I noticed that there was a matriarchal society, but I've heard that that is what is primarily in the books. So fine, whatever, no worries. It's part of the source material. I don't care. I've heard that there was some, major issues with respect to race swapping and things like that. Fine, whatever. It's a bit of an issue when you're looking at Polish folklore and medieval fairy tales and things like this. But ultimately, it's a Netflix show. Let's not take it overly seriously. But outside of that, I did think that most of the men were portrayed as worst blokes on planet Earth. We had incestuous men, we had men which were robbers and rapists and things like that, which ultimately, I guess, is a sign of the times that it was shot in, or is supposed to represent. So I can kind of give it a pass. But ultimately, I round out this review by giving it a 5.5, maybe a 6 out of 10. It's difficult to really gather my thoughts overall. But anyway, we'll progress on to spoilers now, because I think you'll probably want to hear some of the spoilers that I have, or some of the main gripes that I have about this show. So you've had your spoiler warning. We'll touch on spoilers now. Now, one of my main problems with the special effects was the dragon episode. Now, I can forgive the weird little zombies that were coming out of the ground in episode 7 or episode... Yeah, I think it was episode 7. I can forgive them. They weren't, epic. They were kind of Sci-Fi Channel level. And they were fine. Like, it's fine. Incidentally, they were some of the models which I think that they did actually create outfits for, and they could have done some practical effects with, but they chose not to. I can forgive that, but I find it very, very difficult to forgive the dragons. If you're limited by your budget, just simply don't show them. Don't do that. You have to understand where to draw the line, and that was one of them. Those dragons just looked utterly laughable, and they really, really were utterly laughable. It was near painful to look at. We're not even talking sci-fi level of bad. They were just not good, not even remotely. And some things are stated that they're implied and things like this, like telepathic communication and all of this kind of business, but it just wasn't very, very good. There's also some issues with respect to the writing, and I don't know whether this is apparent in the books, but when you've got mages that can teleport anywhere, absolutely anywhere, why are they sitting on boats, traveling? Why are they walking through the woods? Just open a portal and teleport. Not only that, I'm aware that these mages are not battle hardened, but they had an army leader, an ex-army man, working for them as a mage. You would have thought that they would have just teleported these people, their opponents, into the ocean, into the depths of the ocean, so they drowned. Just open up a big portal, teleport them out there. Why didn't they do that? And again, you may say, well, because they didn't think of it, or the showrunners didn't think of it, or it's not in the books. And well, then that's the shortcomings of the books, then, isn't it? That's bad writing. Because in the books, or at least in this show, they even had the opponents open up a teleport and fire arrows down, which then incidentally destroyed half the people. So that's bad writing. No, whatever way you look at it, whether it's from the source material or whether it's from the showrunners, that's bad writing. If you're showing me how powerful these mages are and they can teleport anywhere they want, anywhere, absolutely anywhere, I would like that to come into play in the battle. So again, if that is part of the books, then it's bad writing on the books part. And I don't understand how you could deny that. It's just simply bad writing. Now overall, I didn't hate it, but I just didn't love it. I wasn't enamored with it. It was very slow. Some of the pacing was off here and there, and the editing was bad, and it really let it down. I did watch it all, and I don't begrudge watching it, but I'm not happy or overjoyed that I watched it. I could have took or leave this. It wasn't essential viewing. And that's a shame, because they painted this as being absolutely epic. And I wanted this to be the next Game of Thrones. Now stop, because I know you're all going to think that I'm comparing it to Game of Thrones, and I'm not. My point on that is I think this had the potential to be the next fantasy adventure, which is so popular in the public eye. That's all I mean. I wanted this to be on the level of popularity as Game of Thrones. That's all I mean by that statement. And I definitely think it had the potential to, but it has squandered that potential by trying to stay too closely to the books. Far too close. There are certain elements of source material which you have to adapt. You absolutely have to adapt. And this was one of them. You had to adapt certain bits and pieces. But anyway, there's my overall thoughts. There's my review. Spoilers and non-spoilers. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, show me by giving it a big thumbs up and leaving a share or a comment, and just let me know your thoughts. I know there's a lot of people that really like this show, but hopefully I've conveyed this in a way which makes sense and is objective. I liked a lot of it. I genuinely liked a lot of it. But then there's also just silly things which let it down, in my eyes. So off that merit, I can't give it anything higher than what I have. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please do let me know. As always, I've been Mr. H. Take care.